I'd like to call to order the November 6, 2024 meeting of the Lower Southwark Township Board of Supervisors and ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, stands one nation. Yep. With that, we go to our first and only public comment period. Is there anyone wishing to be recognized? Seeing none, we will move on to the Public Works Director, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Good morning. They're not going to have any office trailers on site. They can place off site for them. So the only thing they have is just a storage container. Parking for the workers. So really minimal impact to the users.
Doug, are we still running power in to
I don't know for sure.
It's good to hear about the trailers. Are we still gonna take a picture or anything just to kind of say afterwards?
Yeah. Discussions continue with properties regarding sidewalk alignment and trees. Main Street sidewalk project, our solicitor is involved with Smile Realty's attorney. We got an estimate from their engineer, which we believe was considerably lower than what we think the actual costs were going to be. So, trying to work through that at this point. Public Works and Community Center projects. We met with CKS 3 weeks ago now. Gave them some additional direction on building location and layout for the community center building. So that project. Grant projects. 63 and 113 signal modernization. Higgins is working on installing the mast arms this week. Signal scheduled to be completed the week of November 19th. And then we'll do the 30-day test and hopefully have everything wrapped up, which is the end of the year. The early striping and signing project is on your agenda for award this evening. Grant opportunity. 2025 Greenlight Go grant. Grant is opening. Our development team has evaluated our signals along the street and came up with 2 that they believe are priorities. One is Main Street and Walker, and the other is Main Street and Culp Road. Both of those projects are in $350,000 to $400,000 each, and with a roughly $70,000 to $80,000 match. So the scoping forms are due 22nd of this month, so looking for direction from the board. Both, Joe and I discussed it, why not try both? We've been very successful with them, with the Arlic or with the Greenlight Go program.
No reason not to, right?
I'm not. I would agree. That is prologue.
Yes. Give it a whirl. Spin the dice.
Getting
Great.
Hey Doug, just curiosity, why those intersections? What was the need that they?
It's generally the age of the signal, overall age of the signal, and the condition of the mast arms.
Okay.
If mast arms are exhibiting any rusting, then that becomes a concern for the structural stability of the mast arm themselves. It's become, in the last 10 years, become a real high priority in PennDOT's list to try to get these so to avoid failures. Mast arms. So that's what's driving.
Thank you.
Well, dirt and gravel low volume road program administered by the Conservation District. We're looking at a couple of projects that we think would qualify for funding. So we're going to take necessary steps. We have to do traffic counts to make sure they qualify as low volume roads, and then we'll meet with Jessica Buck from the Conservation District and get her feedback on viability of the projects and move forward. The local share account grants, apply for a grant to construct the police impound garage and the police canopy. Police vehicles, working with Boyle Construction and getting realistic estimates for the work. So we can hopefully stay within, the limits of the grant. Move forward with those. Also on your agenda for tonight is a resolution for the Pico Green Region grant, the bonus round grant. Up to $50,000, and we're looking to install solar parking lights at Park Avenue Fields and also do some tree planting there. Speaking of Park Avenue Fields, Mr. Krause and I have been discussing the Harleysville Eagles' desire as for advertising purposes. So they're looking for opportunities to generate revenue. And the idea that they came up with was to install a fence that they could hang banners or signs to for their supporters to advertise. What they propose is the blue line there. They wanted it to be 10 feet off the playing field and stretch from the 20-yard line to the 20-yard line, it's 180 feet. There's some challenges with that. We've got some feedback from park board members that aren't thrilled with the idea. It's too close to the field. There's no accounting for the buffer requirements for the cross. So we're not thrilled with that concept. I came up with the idea of if we were to split the fence and do it where the red lines are indicated, and kind of tie it into maybe some landscaping that they're thinking about doing around the scoreboard. My thought was that everybody's looking at the scoreboard, so where would the advertisers want to advertise? So I think that the Eagles weren't thrilled with that idea. They seem to think they've got some security concerns with separating fans from players. That's real or not. I guess Ken and I were discussing this and just wanted to get some feedback from the board.
They felt that they needed to separate the families and the fans from the visiting team. I mean, it's just on the visiting side, which I don't understand how it's just on the visiting side. They have that issue.
My suspicion is if we went back to the Eagles and said the red lines are what you can get and the signs are only during their season, they'll probably say thank you very much and accept it and move on. Yes.
Has the red lines been discussed with the park board members at all?
No, that's something
It hasn't been vetted back to the park.
Yeah, so that would go from us. If we're okay with it, it can go back to the park board and let them make their recommendations.
I'd like to leave it in the hands of the park board. I mean,
Yeah,
those are the
kind of
folks
my-
that got to live with it.
That's fun, your feedback.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And honestly, with the park board meetings, I know that they're more invested in the parks, particularly Park Avenue. I don't frequent that one as much, so I know they have more insights on that than I, so I'm curious to hear their take first.
My only take from a board standpoint would be, I'm fine with wherever you work out from location. I would be very much limiting it to their season. Because I don't think we need to be advertising out at the park outside of season if Frost wants to use it or people just walking through there on, non-season time.
And be sensitive to the neighborhood adjacent.
Yeah, right.
That's
that was my idea.
another challenge. I mean, honestly,
It is.
depending on where it is, it's gonna be a billboard for the.
Yeah,
Did the
backlit
and
billboard.
did the park board can't have any say, obviously with Blue Line, did any have any, was it just the buffering, was it the location, or was there, hey, we don't advertisements in the park? Or was-
No, it's just the buffering of location.
Thank you.
I think it's clear. Anything else,
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yes. This morning. Just some department activities, have done some base repairs on a few roads in the township. Doing improvements to the Park Avenue fields, aeration, reseeding, top dressing, yards. Also working on some dry weather projects. Rolf Mill Road, we're trying to regain some of the shoulder there. We've got that culvert that crosses just below Shakespeare, it's eroded into basically the edge of the roadway. So we're trying to reestablish that.
Great.
Camp Wawa Park, one of the things that comes up on our divot list every year is at the dam where we pour concrete, the concrete's being undermined by the water. So it's got basically a cavity or void underneath the concrete. So we're looking to restore that in a way that hopefully will stay. That's the chance. And Indian Creek Road, just upstream of the bridge. We've got a gravel bar and also some eroding embankment that we're looking to try. Reports that they generate over 2 years for each of our bridges. And it's all that I have. You have to meet anybody.
One question, any update, what's the status of the Alderfer Road additional parks that were put in by Fox Lane? How are they looking?
They were looking better in the spring than they were just a few weeks ago when we looked at them.
Looking rather dry?
Yeah, the weather hasn't been kind to them. And we met with the developer. They have a professional sort of management company that's working on the fields. Just haven't had the rain, haven't had the good growing seasons, and it's we're at the earliest, I would think, sometime this year. Except they're pushing to accept because those fields are targeted development. And whether there's a way they can separate them out and dedicate to development, you just have separate agreements. We need that to the solicitor's office that we work out. They're pushing hard to get everything worked out. Or just saying, when they pump the brakes, they're
Not ready yet.
Condition.
Yeah.
And even the areas surrounding the fields isn't really good.
Okay,
I'm pushing hard.
thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else for Mr. Jones? Moving on.
Yeah.
Chief Medway.
No.
Very good. Okay. Like the sounds of that. All right, building and zoning, Mr. Buki.
Chairman. So as far as permits that were issued last month, we have 67, which is in line basically with our average. We are up an uptick from last year with our average per month at 72. We do not have a zoning hearing board for this month, as I mentioned before. The planning commission agenda we're still working on. As a reminder, this is a joint planning commission, November, December joint, and it's going to be held on December 11th this year. For your meeting this evening, the land development items that you'll see are 196 Main Street. There's a couple of outstanding conditions to the conditional use approval that you granted earlier on this year, and then also discussion of the waivers for the preliminary land development request. So it'll just be discussion of the waiver. Okay, and then also Shahada and Village of Letter Rock, discussion of waivers of that preliminary / final the land development request. There's also a planning module review. It's on the agenda for acceptance of the planning module for 645 Store Road. That's a subdivision that still has yet to receive recommendation from the planning commission. But this is moving the planning module forward for lot super design. It's not an uncommon thing, but sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where this occurs before the recommendation for planning commission. It doesn't mean that your previous subdivision, just means that you're allowing for the process to continue with DEP regarding lot super study. But that's what that is. And the last thing I have on the agenda are the proposed right-of-way amendments. And so this actually came about during the process of proposing the amendments to the commercial district and analyzing the existing buildings with relationships with roads. And setbacks are based on ultimate rights of way, and the planning commission was discussing how it appeared as if the ultimate right of ways that go through the village of Harleysville, appear to be inconsistent with village character. And so now we're taking a look at that because what's coming up on your agendas in the future in the near future are the amendments, the proposed amendments, to village commercial district. So this kind of runs hand in hand. So I issued that document illustrating some exhibits that I produced to kind of put it into perspective. The planning commission is looking at, and they'll be looking at that at their December 11th joint meeting. And I also have it here tonight if you guys want to discuss it tonight, or if you wanted to just wait until the planning commission saw it in December.
Right, I'll wait for the planning commission.
Yeah, so I want to hear what them weigh in. I did notice that it's Harleysville and Little Rock that were looked at. There are a couple other villages that might warrant a different consideration, so I would
Well,
offer that.
the village of Burnfield, the 100-foot ultimate right of way that goes through there actually fits well within distances between building across the street is actually in most cases over 100.
Okay.
And then mainland is already up in Omaha. Right of way with that we have in the township.
So those are accounted for.
I think they're
Okay.
Mainly got switched when the bypass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this stems from Shahada?
No. No, it was brought about in discussion with the planning commission. Shahada, since it's in the BC district, of course, was part of that discussion. Also, Little Rock Village Home is in both the road and the Bartley road, Bartley Pike, just land development. All of those proposed developments in the existing buildings, that's how basically this idea was being generated.
No, I didn't know it was discussed at the planning commission. The email I saw too indicated that might not have been, that's why I was curious.
The specific proposal for the actual reduction hasn't been published yet, but the discussion with the relationship of the ultimate rights of way and the existing village setbacks was discussed. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Buchanan? All right, moving right along, Mr. Chakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the minutes report is a review of the minutes for October 2nd. Any comments, questions, or corrections? The agenda for tomorrow evening includes the following recommendation to award the hourly multi-road safety restriping and signing upgrades. Recommendation for bid award the snowplow for the case 621G wheel loader. Little Rock Crossroad Residential Development 703, 709 Shahada discussion of waivers 196 Main Street remaining conditional use requirements, and this is a review of the architecture of the bank and trash enclosure screenings. And 196 Main Street preliminary plan discussion of waivers. Under new business, resolution 2417, a resolution authorizing the application for the Pico Green Region open space bonus round. As Mr. Jones said, this is for the solar LED lights and the tree plantings at Park Avenue Fields. Motion to accept the planning module for 645 Store Road. Authorization to advertise the 2025 budget. Motion to approve the Freedom Valley's request for consent for the sale of 3 ambulances. And possible motion to appoint to the vacancy.
Good.
Okay, the next item is presentation by Jamie Suckinger from EFM. As we've discussed recently, the possibility of going out for a loan to pay for the retro reimbursement grants, the upfront cost for retro reimbursement grants that we've seen approved for the township. As you know, there's been a number of them, which now add up to and now including the Store Road Bridge, over $7 million. So, all of those items are for retro reimbursement, which means the cash has to post money up front and then get reimbursed by the state after the projects, or during the project or after they're completed. So Jamie's gonna be here to discuss that, also to kind of give an overview of possible funding scenarios for the public works and community center building.
Head here, so this is a good news problem for at least the first conversation about the grant, grant loan, the Chris Burge would be this listing in. So we'll have to get considerations at your next. We get proposals. Really the main change since the last meeting was because you received an additional $3.5 million project of the 8% grant. We actually went out and modified the term sheet we sent out to the banks to increase the borrowing amount, which ultimately extended the final maturity of what the loan will look like. But in real life, as we all know, as what's going to happen here is you're going to borrow $7.4 million. We'll have the proposals come back, and hopefully the proposals we receive are both strong on interest rate and also give us enough flexibility that as you receive the grant funding coming in as you pay the project, which again, since there's so many of them, we'll probably, structure the capacity that we can pay some large principal payments down, which will ultimately reduce the final maturity of the debt and of course the principal amount of the interest you pay over the course of time. So what you're looking at is a bigger number. The state will approve the bigger number, and then within the next 2-3 years, there'll be a major pay down, $5 to $6 million, depending on when the money comes in the house. So the beautiful part about all this is if we get the proposals back and the interest rate's somewhere in the 4% range, as of today, assuming it's a loan that you draw it all down, you'll earn as much as what you're paying. So while you're carrying for the loan itself, you'll be earning interest when you borrow at the rate that you're borrowing at.
I do like the sounds of that.
Yeah, it's a really structure.
Yeah.
Pretty much a no-brainer here, so.
It's a first question, the arbitrage.
Yeah. It's gonna be. That does, so I could adjust things, but for purposes of our expectation, probably pretty close over the next year-ish or so. Earnings should get to your bank and to the loan rate that we'll get from the banks. We don't know what that is yet, I haven't gotten it yet, but we've gotten some back, they're probably 4% range, maybe a little over. Shake out, but so that's the big news. So I'm going to go to 3 pages here. Really is page 2, which is just an overview of the concepts in general. This really is a multi-step funding plan that's taking advantage of all of the both federal, state guidelines that we can do as a local government. First would be doing what is called bank qualification. And this particular transaction that we'll actually consider in 2 weeks will be about $7.5 million, which we will have to have approved to settle this calendar year. So we'll settle before December 31st. That ends the bank qualification year. You'll get a new bank qualification year 25. Bank qualification is just simply a special exemption for the investors or the banks that own your debt, that the interest that they receive, they can fully deduct off their books, and thus giving you additional reduction in interest rate they'll offer you. Plus, there's some additional flexibilities for fall provisions, ability to prepay in the future. So that is a major value in Pennsylvania debt issuance. So we want to make sure you're going to take advantage of this $10 million special exemption. So see these steps I'm talking about. $10 million is going to come up very much normally here because it just makes a lot of sense for us to do that. So $7 million in 2024 it should get paid down mostly over the next couple of years. And then as you guys get updates on your public works and community center facilities, assuming it fits within the amounts that we're expecting, more than likely we'll consider probably multiple, maybe 2 to 3 different transactions to fund those projects over the next 3 years, because you as a local government have to reasonably expect to spend money within 3 years. So more than likely through the pay down process, the bidding process, and ultimately the construction process, and those buildings may take 3 to 4 years, which are all said and done. So doing them in steps allows us to do it both legally from a tax standpoint and also economically, because you'll be able to phase in your interest payments over the course of time. So I'll show you what the numbers look like, but I wanted to kind of give you high level. You're gonna see me multiple times over the next 4 years, pretty much about it. So we have that concept. I think I'll hit all the highlights. A couple things that Chris and I and staff will work on is there's gonna be a delicate balance of some of the approvals that the Commonwealth has to approve. And because we're doing this particular first loan, it's a grant funded loan that's gonna be reduced. What we're filing with the Commonwealth and what it will ultimately look like is gonna be a little bit unique. We're gonna have to make sure that they understand what we're doing, so we don't kind of tweak it. And I'm just telling you this out loud, that that's kind of the uniqueness of this because of the pay downs of the future debt. So we'll work through that, and I wouldn't worry about it. I just want to let you know that we're under consideration. Questions on this high level? Okay. So I'm gonna skip that all the way to page 7. I would note, don't look at page 6, something that cut off. We'll have over $7.4 million, and we'll start paying interest in 2025 and insure in 2033. Get an update on that. But this is the summary on page 7, which is in the blue column. This is the estimated amortization debt service payment schedule, column 5. You'll have essentially an interest only period from 25 through 27. And then we'll put some principal payments in 28 through 33, essentially. So when you guys budget for next year, your incremental debt service will be about $333,000. So you will be budgeting from 1.3 million to $1.6 million in 2025. That's the incremental amount. I don't know if we're gonna get a drawdown loan. Frankly, drawdown doesn't have a ton of value because of the interest environment we're in. You can borrow at essentially the same rate you're gonna invest in. The drawdown value would just be timing of interest when it kicks in. So we'll see what we get. You know, I'd rather get you the lowest rate possible, all the flexibilities, but we'll give you an evaluation of that. So blue is if you borrow the money, no pay down of debt. The yellow is a pure estimate of what happens if you receive all the money by 2027, and then we write a check at one time. You may write a check over multiple periods of time, you may get a little less money, but let's make the assumption you get a significant amount of grant funding, close to $6 million. We reduce the borrowing amount to about 1.5. That column 8 would be what your budgeted payments would look like. So really during construction, you're paying full interest ultimately, and then you pay off the principal at the back end. So your debt really doesn't extend very long. It's because you're paying down much principal. Make sense?
Joe, real quick, just so I'm clear, the money we're borrowing is for the grant amount, not our match,
It's for
or is it for the project amount?
project.
So the project amount,
Yes.
and then the grant will on very, so my question would be the match amount that we're paying.
Right.
We're not intending to finance that over a long period of time.
No.
That we're gonna pay that out of our capital or cash flow,
Correct.
but it'll all get rolled into this. So I guess my only question is, does it make sense to borrow the match amount?
I would borrow the match. I would
Okay.
borrow this amount because I've seen grants and things take longer than expected. It's not gonna cost you much more in interest by borrowing this amount. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't hurt you from the bank qualification standpoint. There's no state or regulatory requirements. You don't end up using all the money or you have some of the money left over, you just pay that.
Good.
You end up the same. So I'd rather you have all the options.
Right.
Did I understand you correctly that there's no penalty to pay it off early?
Depends what we get. Some proposals that we may get will be full prepayable anytime without penalty. At least some of those options. There'll be others that say there may be a prepayment provision for a few years, but they may give us an option to just make a one-time pay down of principal based on $5 million or $6 million. That's so what we get from whatever bank will determine which way we go. So
And in that case, if we got grant money reimbursed, we just leave it sitting in the bank until we get to that pay period.
a big check. Just a structure. I'm doing a dream.
Yeah.
Excuse me, one grant project. They borrowed $5 million. They originally bought $7 million. Project that they got a grant from RACP for like $5 million. The project's done. They're permanently financing a RACP position. Have one-time $2.1 million pay down. So that proposal just was a 20-year amortization, made a lot of sense to do it that way. We may get very simple, flexible, prepaying time you want, with the best rate. I just don't know what to do. So, right, lots of flexibility when we get it. But that's the grant. I say simple, that's what it really is. Borrow the money, get grants, pay it down. Or, invest the money at your local bank at around the same rates that you borrow. One thing to point out though is during the course of the project itself, depending on how long it takes, if you earn above the yield, if your borrowing rate is 4.15% or something like that, and you earn by it, you may have to pay some money back to the IRS because you can't earn positive arbitrage because you're borrowing. It could be a bad problem.
It's hard.
If you don't want it, you can. And it's very possible that we may start out more earning than the borrowing rate, and then if the Fed drops rates, your rates will go down your loan, and it'll be going to be a course of time. So I wouldn't try to futz around with it, just take the money, invest it.
Don't do the brain damage, try to figure out how to get around it, right?
So I'm just gonna turn all the way to the very high level, not far from what we talked about maybe a year ago. This is making an assumption that we have about $30 million worth of projects versus multiple buildings to do. And the idea is, as I mentioned, we do this in multiple steps. Two reasons why we do it are one, maintaining that bank qualification I mentioned, that $10 million number is a really valuable opportunity for local governments. We've done this for decades this way. The call provisions on the debt will be 5 years. Good. We have a strong interest rate, great credit, and we would structure the debt to be almost like a similar structure where it's a wraparound debt service to have as little of an impact as possible. Why we also would do it over the course of time, because I hope he's talking about doing more, getting more grants for some of these buildings, and maybe we don't need to do the green option in the future. So we've now kind of borrowed sources of funding for acquisition of land or construction, and depending on, internal funds or external funds coming in, this last green number may never happen, or maybe just much smaller. So high level, this is what it could look like. I would finally point out, if you look at column 5, this makes the assumption you use no grant money paying down. We shown it to you in the most conservative fashion. In real life, by the time we get to 2026, 2027, that green will look like that previous page I showed you. And we'll make sure that the wrap structure is kind of level overall, take all that down. But I wanted to.
Is it, in theory, really where we'll be by 2028 would be if we're on sheet 4, we have our final current debt service payments being paid out for the land, the building and land and the golf course.
Yep.
And so after 2028, we have no debt.
Yeah.
And the other assumption would be the loan we're talking about for the $7 million is paid off because we've received back all of our grant money and whatnot. So we're starting with a clean slate as of about 28, and which then makes these numbers look.
Yes, correct.
And I would just ask if, and John, could you do me a favor and just rerun this with that assumption also?
So you meaning instead, in addition to the grant funding?
Well, just with the assumption that we're paid off on our debt by 2028. Okay, so that, I just like to see it as, one of the things in the back of my head is that allows us from a tax structure standpoint to see if our current tax structure can pay this without making any major changes to revenue.
To give you the answer to the question, it's like, you're gonna get 6, 8, 10.
Okay.
It's just pretty much gonna be.
Right. And we're currently covering about $1.3 million in debt service. So that's the 200,000. That's the simple math that I like to look at. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Big picture, it can be. Dollars total debt service, like $200,000.
Okay.
So that's actually amazing. It's quick.
Yeah.
Be able to do all that work. I'm guessing that's gonna get extended.
It pays to be fiscally responsible. Doesn't hurt.
But that also gives us the idea that if we want to do this and we want to keep it within the current tax structure, we need to make sure part of our funding structure is getting X% of this as grants so that we could keep that tax rate flat and just continue to make the debt service payments we've currently been making.
Exactly.
Right.
This is-
Let's figure that out. Yeah.
One question about the interest rates on these loans. Would there be any possibility of restructuring if there happens to be
Yeah.
a quick drop off on interest rates
Yeah.
over the next couple of years, a year?
Probably significant with most flexibility. All the bond issues, these are.
Right, sure.
they'll have bond. So let's make this.
Mhm.
And seeds for years, we were back refinancing debt,
Okay.
restructuring, re-amortizing, yes, all those things can happen.
Great,
In the
okay.
future, if.
We'll make sure it's open ended that we can do stuff like that. That's
Beat it to a pulp.
yeah, terrific. Okay, great.
So.
Yeah, good.
That's. Do is. Actually consider the ordinance or the loan proposal that we receive, whoever that may be. And then that 20th will allow Chris to file with the Commonwealth and we'll be able to set up the court meeting here. That's the case.
Sounds good.
I probably have all the highlights, Chris, but yeah.
Are you looking at me, Jamie?
Yeah.
Because you cut out a little bit there at in that last commentary. Yeah, I think what Jamie has described is sound. You can go ahead and borrow the full amount, knowing that you don't have to use your money to supplement the cash flows. You'll have enough money to get the projects underway, and as the reimbursements come in, you can pay down this debt. It makes all the kind of sense in the world to us. There are some federal tax law rules. And I think we're going to be just fine because of the commitment to go ahead and pay down this bank loan as and when money becomes available to you. So you've got a chance for some good earnings while you need it, and then you won't be sitting on the money after you've got the grants in hand. When Jamie mentioned bank qualified bonds, I think these are incorrectly named in the industry. They ought to be called bank advantaged. Your loan and your bonds, any of them will be tax exempt to all investors, but banks who lend to small governments defined as governments who borrow 10 million or less in a calendar year, you can provide some extra tax incentives to the banks. They get a better tax treatment on their books for how they handle their deposits and count their expenses, and that's what makes this advantageous for you. But with all that said, I think what Jamie's and Joe have worked on is the idea that you'll get a set of bank proposals on the 12th, time to evaluate them, sort them through. Some of them may have more liberal prepayment provisions than others. And, he'll come to you with the best recommendation and would set you up to take action on that on the 20th. 20th means about a month later, we can close after state approvals. So you get funded in 2024.
Sounds good.
Chris, you said you think we'll be fine. I hope we'll be fine. Thank you.
Well, I'm along, it all depends, right?
Being new to this process, is it extended to local banks too? or-
Yes. I mean, it's very powerful when you get it. Before we- It's like you try to see what we have on these.
Great. Excellent. All right, any other questions? Comments? Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to see you bright and early. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Your nickel.
Thank you, Chairman. The next item on the agenda is the 2025 budget. As I sent to you yesterday, an updated version which has these updated year-to-date numbers, updated projected numbers and so forth. Items of note, at the last meeting, we did discuss raising the earned income tax proposed revenue for next year that is in this budget. Additionally, we're showing a transfer from the capital fund of 408,000, which includes the 333,000 that was noted in Jamie's post. Obviously, that's going to be something different, but that's a number we have in there for that. There's a transfer from from capital fund 408, which includes the 75,000 for community center, and then the 333 and change 160.54 for the loan. The bottom line for the general fund will be that we're budgeting a revenue reserve of 1.721 million, almost 1.722 million. Which is very near what we budgeted last year for that line item. And as always, I expect that would be somewhere north of that by the end. I did notice, make the notice changes in the capital reserve fund showing the projected 2024 for the proceeds from borrowing added there, and as well as the transfer out to the general fund of the 408,164. We did add one item after our meeting with the fire company of 93,000. This is for turnout gear for the active firefighters in the company. Fire company had applied for a grant. They did not receive the grant for this project. They have received other grants for other things, but they did not receive the money for the turnout gear. And they are required by the state, the NFPA and so forth, to renew that gear every so often. So this
And they got it a little behind on the replacement because some of the gear was not available due to COVID interruptions and whatnot. So where they're more consistent of doing a few every year, they got behind, and this was meant to catch them back up. So I think it's worthy investment for them. And then we did have the conversation based on the restructuring with the fire protection fund, with the increase in the millage and the money we're putting away annually for the $100,000 per year for their equipment fund. You know, that's the budget to live within going forward, you know, unless there's something extraordinary that we talk about, and they're comfortable with that. Those are all numbers that and what we did talk about with, they do have a ladder truck coming up in several years. That's like a $2 million vehicle. We talked about having a similar discussion as this. If we can put $100,000 to $150,000 up for capital annually, what does that amortize out to from a borrowing? So that, that's a 25-year vehicle. Shouldn't pay for it all in a year or two. You got to pay for that over a period of time, and they're comfortable with that. So we're going to talk through some of those options with them as that gets a little bit closer. But I think they have a critical date coming up here, because if they order the vehicle or the chassis early, because it takes like 5 years to build these things out, they get a significant discount on it, and it can actually beat out future regulations. So that's something we'll come back to make sure we're all financed properly on it. But that sounds like sound decision making there.
And as discussed, the fire protection fund shows a 0.17 mil increase, and the ambulance fund shows a 0.15 mil increase. And so other than that, does anybody have any questions?
I think all my questions were answered last time round. I really appreciated your breakdown. You kind of gave us a heads up of what you're adding, but breaking it down, why we did that. I don't have any questions.
Yeah, details have been great. Thank you.
I think, as always, Joe, you've done a good job of balancing the needs of the community with keeping it relatively fiscally conservative, but we're doing our fiscal duty to fund the necessary operations of this government.
Well, it's often, a dollar is worth more today than it would be in 5 years. So, sometimes it's better to spend those funds now than it is to wait. So, you run into an emergency. Next item is the appointments for 2024. We do have a list here. The one item of note is the vacancy board chair. We recently did receive an email from Mr. Gifford, who has moved out of the township, so therefore can no longer be and as a resignation for his vacancy board chair position. So we are currently without a vacancy board chairman. So that's why I have that on the agenda for tomorrow night. That the board's discussed where you are as far as someone who may be interested in
I would propose Doug Johnson's name as someone we should consider tomorrow night as
I like that.
the next recently removed supervisor that didn't run for reelection, but still lives in the township, active in the community on the library board.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense to
I
everybody.
In
think
favor of that.
as we recently
And that
have,
will be through the end of this year.
Yeah.
And then you reappoint for 20.
as I recently had Mr. Gifford too, it makes sense unofficially to have somebody in.
Right.
Reach
out to him to see if he.
I was just gonna say, what would be the next? step?
I did.
You did, is he interested?
Yeah. I didn't want to propose his name until
Fair enough.
he said he did.
It's trying to put people in that position.
But knowing Doug, he would.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, he did it without hesitation. He'd be happy to serve.
Now, Jill, when are we
What
going?
we'll do is we usually reach out to everyone on the list.
As I said, I
Realize
realize
if
it's
they
November.
want to be either be reappointed.
Okay.
Reach out to general population, see if there's any interest.
Okay. Wonderful.
And that's it for me. We do have, the need for, an executive session, brief executive session to discuss item personnel and real estate.
Sounds good. With
I
that,
know someone in the audience, I don't know,
public comment, any public comment?
came in after the.
You're good,
public
okay.
comment.
Want to extend
Thanks
that
for coming in.
invitation? Yeah, good to see you. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.